Friends, big warm-hearted welcome to everyone. Lovely to get to just take a moment and see who's here. Yay. Happy Mother's Day. This is like I didn't know this was Mother's Day. I've been in like a 1 month silent retreat and kind of like in a little bit of a bubble, like a nice bubble. But so then it's Mother's Day. My wife Amanda mentioned yesterday, oh, it's Mother's Day today. I was like, oh no, Mother's Day is like one of the most special days of the year, like in my experience. So at the outset of this um, special little short window of time we have together, let's just like really generate some just like a really bright intention for this time. Like really, that all these moms, all these beings with such kindness and compassion, with such strength, like any being, it could be a mom, a dad, friend, grandparent, anyone who's like really helped us and cared for us, nurtured us. Like may what we're doing here today, like may it just uplift and nurture them. May it just give them back all the beautiful, uplifting, supportive nutrition and protection, fearlessness, courage, loveliness, delight, anything they need to feel happy, relaxed, settled. May this session we're doing together exactly become the cause that's going to make all these mother beings this perfectly happy forever. And just generate that in our minds for just a few seconds together. Thank you, Mom. So this is like Tibetan Buddhist meditation session, and it's mainly going to be meditating. Um, but just thought to actually kind of, also give some structure to what we're doing here together. So um, the first most direct thing in Tibetan Buddhism is like, be with your mind, be with your heart right now. We always have this awareness. So like really let this awareness kind of settle, relax, and just do what it does. It's naturally bright. It's naturally good. It's naturally beautiful. They say the 84,000 teachings of the Buddha are all about relaxing. And the highest teaching is just to be natural. Just relax as you are. And so this is the most direct, essential teaching. All the other teachings of the Buddha lead to this. So we'll just begin off the bat. If that is the proper meditation technique for you, to just remember to relax as you are, for some people it is, then here's the time. You get to let's take 30 seconds and just like silently enjoy kind of our body, our speech, our mind, this what we have, our environment. Like just let it naturally flow as it is. However, that's flowing in us, outside of us. Just like take 30 seconds and like be as you are. So all these great Buddhist masters have said this is the highest teaching. This is the whole point. To just be as you are, to totally relax and settle into your own naturalness, the naturalness of yourself, of others, of the relationships we're in, the worlds we share. That's the highest teaching. It's just to point out this is already lovely. Interdependence is already happening. And so then the challenge is if we're not comfortable staying there, if we're not comfortable just really naturally letting our fullness shine, then instantly that moment there's a path. A path from not being natural. I feel like I'm not natural. I'm like the Buddha taught, like every single being, their essential nature is perfect love, perfect compassion, and perfect wisdom. That's naturalness in Buddhism. It's called bodhicitta, the heart mind of enlightenment. And to fully awaken to that nature is actually just to become fully natural. And so if we're not comfortable with that, like we have so-called habits that cause us to kind of close up, lock up, fixate, hold on, then that instant, there's a path of practice. And the whole path of every Buddhist path is to actually just recognize that naturalness. But it all depends on how we're holding and how we're not seeing that as it already is. How each mind in this moment isn't seeing its own naturalness, its own beauty, its own wisdom and compassion. And so that path is instantly created by ourselves the moment we kind of lose our ongoing continuity of naturalness. So each path is very specific to each heart and each mind. And those paths change as our hearts and our minds change. And so that's why you get these 84,000 teachings of the Buddha, trying to actually respond exactly to the specific way that a being that the Buddha was with is kind of in one way just refusing to like let themselves be natural. And the Buddha said, okay, you're holding this way, so let's like ease, maybe try this, and it'll ease up and the naturalness will kind of shine out more brightly. So it's always a warm invitation. The Buddha wasn't trying to enforce anything. It was actually kind of like holding a mirror, saying, look, you're already amazing. And here's what you don't see that's preventing your amazing amazement from just actually being there already. So that's called path. And so Tibetan Buddhism has all these different paths. And so what we'll do today is practice from the ground up 4 different techniques that layer from the bedrock Buddhism techniques into like expanding, including more whole, expand, include. And so eventually to just that full inclusion, the great completion, great perfection is just naturalness. But we'll kind of really quickly learn 4 techniques and then get a taste for them in our experience and see how they kind of like unfold into each other and how each enfolds the more foundational ones. So this is how integration seems to work. So in Buddhism, just for practicality, any meditation practice is always set in these 3 frames. It's called the 3 noble ones, the 3 frames. Noble beginning, noble middle, noble end. Every practice is in these 3 frames: noble beginning, noble middle, noble end. So the noble beginning is always, in Buddhism, it's called refuge and bodhicitta. And here, refuge in this case is we're actually kind of taking refuge in what's reliable. What'll actually bring lasting happiness. And the highest teaching is our nature is. When we align with our nature, that's actually what it's naturally self-satisfied. So this refuge is always the first point. And in one way to activate that, just to see the specialness, the preciousness, to like activate in your heart and mind, joy and gratitude. This deep joy and gratitude for like actually what is happening in my experience right now. And just whatever ways help you activate that joy and gratitude. We'll take a few moments to do these 2 noble beginnings. Activating a refuge, this with joy and appreciation, this kind of sizzling kind of gratitude. So that's a practice that over time, we try to learn how to do that more easily. And then secondly, the bodhicitta or heart mind of enlightenment. Try to really connect to the beauty and goodness, the innate dignity, the wisdom and compassion of all beings, oneself definitely included. So first, refuge is, this is impermanent, it's fragile, it's also an amazingly special opportunity. So try to generate this kind of appreciation, this gratitude. Like, wow, how amazing this is that I can be here with you all, that my eyes work, that the air I breathe is nice. Like, so just whatever activate this gratitude, it's the first part of the first noble one of every single Buddhist practice. When this becomes like a natural way of being, to constantly being saturated by gratitude, Buddhism calls that mother recognition. All these beings we come across every day, we have the visceral experience that like this being has helped me like my mom. Like when I couldn't do without their help, they helped me. They supported me. They nurtured me. We start to actually activate a visceral experience called mother recognition that in Buddhism, all this infinite lives of time go back long enough, every single being has at one point cared for you, cared for each of us, nurtured us, protected us, taught us. And so we're kind of like brightly ringing that thread of connection with that being and viscerally like, oh, wow, such an amazing being. Look at what you've done for me. And so then naturally refuge, that's refuge, gratitude, and naturally extends to be like, oh, but you're suffering now. Like life is so hard. So what can I do for you? Like, how can I repay this kindness? All the love you've given me in all these different ways. How can I repay this kindness? How can I like be a loving, supportive, nurturing atmosphere for you too? This is called bodhicitta. So every being has this innate wisdom and compassion. And at one point, that being has like really done everything they can to help us be alive and be happy. So now, oh, we're suffering. All these beings are suffering. What can I do? Bodhicitta is to see that innate goodness of others, to see that innate goodness of oneself, to really sizzle that in one's mind and heart, and really have this deep aspiration wish. May all beings who are suffering be free of suffering. May all beings who want happiness have exactly what they need for happiness. May all beings like be showered, like have lasting happiness. This is never interrupted. And may everyone really treat each other as like a dear, warm-hearted friend, as like the most special, careful, like loving kind of child. We're all in the same boat. We all want to be happy. No one wants to suffer. So this is called the four boundless prayers of the Bodhisattva. It's called of bodhicitta, the heart mind of enlightenment. These four boundless aspirations. It's called aspirational bodhicitta, aspirational heart mind. And there's said here, I'll put it here in the chat field. This is this the typical way that this is said in one translation is this four boundless prayer. And if anyone would just even to contemplate that, activate that, we'll do that. This is the of the noble beginning. It's the second part, the bodhicitta, generating this really sizzling heart of enlightenment. And this is one way to do it with the four boundless aspiration prayers of a bodhisattva, those courageous to actually serve all beings. May all beings have happiness and the cause of happiness. May all beings be free of suffering and the cause of suffering. May all beings never be separated from supreme happiness, which is without suffering. May all beings remain in boundless equanimity, free from both attachment to close ones and rejection of others. May all beings have happiness in the cause of happiness. May all beings be free of suffering in the cause of suffering. May all beings never be separated from supreme happiness, which is without suffering. May all beings remain in boundless equanimity, free from both attachment to close ones and rejection of others. May all beings have happiness in the cause of happiness. May all beings be free of suffering in the cause of suffering. May all beings never be separated from supreme happiness, which is without suffering. May all beings remain in boundless equanimity, free from both attachment to close ones and rejection of others. And we'll just relax in this beautiful, boundless aspiration for the welfare, happiness of every single being for a short period of time. So this is the noble beginning. In Buddhism, this is always the noble beginning of a formal practice and of just daily life, actually, too. We try to constantly reactivate this boundless gratitude, joy, and appreciation, the refuge, and then also bodhicitta, the heart mind of enlightenment. We're trying to make that our living moment of experience from moment to moment to moment to moment. That's the beautiful beginning, the boundless, noble beginning. Simply, it's called motivation. The view, the worldview I'm coming to this moment with, that I'm being with others with. That's like an ongoing practice for a Buddhist. So this is the noble beginning. And then the noble middle, or the noble main practice. And here I have a PDF I'll share at the end that kind of outlines these things. So it's helpful if we can just be in the space. If you like want to know them later, to like don't have to worry about writing stuff down right now. If you want to, it's easier to just kind of be with each other in the space. So the noble middle, the noble main practice, then this depends on the specific way our heart is closing, our mind is dimming, like kind of how our beautiful, boundless, infinite nature of wisdom and compassion, when we're not relaxing in that, it closes, it's covered, it covers itself. It's not aware of itself. And so there's different ways for us to cover ourselves, to not see. It's called ignorance in Buddhism, a not knowing. And so there's 4 different ways that we can approach here this main practice. And there's a lot of ways to slice this pie. There's 84,000. We're highlighting 4 paths. So the first way is the ground bedrock Buddhism, often called Theravada Buddhism, foundational Buddhism, essential Buddhism. So that's the first kind of way we'll kind of engage the practice for this noble middle. And noble middle always has 2 components. One is a concentration practice. It's called calm abiding, calm staying. When our mind kind of keeps moving, reacting, responding kind of wildly or sleepily, kind of basically not being present, then the first kind of practice is to have our mind hold itself present. And so it always involves some kind of a holding, a concentrating, a focus. This is called shamatha or shine in Tibetan, a calm abiding. We're abiding calmly. We're trying to peacefully remain. And we do that by holding an object. That's this whole set of first kind of practices, concentration or calm abiding practices. Then the second type of practices, it's called insight or vipassana, supreme seeing, extraordinary seeing. And this is all these practices don't involve any holding. We're just letting naturalness do what it does. We're not trying to regulate, anchor, root, lock, freeze. All that distorts the natural flow. It's helpful if it holds us to be calm. But after that, we need to just let our calm insight be what it is. It's already naturally wise. It's already naturally caring. And so the second part, this insight or the supreme seeing, is just once we've kind of calmed and collected ourselves, settled our mind, settled our body, settled our energy, once we kind of have that basis, then we allow that naturalness to freely be as it is. It's called insight, extreme or extraordinary seeing. So all the noble middle practices fit into these two types. And every Tibetan Buddhist practice has these two types. And so each of the four ways we'll kind of practice, they all have a calm abiding as the foundation. And in addition, they release the holding and let the nature flow as it flows naturally. So here in this noble middle, we'll begin with kind of bedrock, essential, heart drop. So important, foundational, always essential to like foundational, like bedrock Buddhism. Theravada. It's always in the heart. And in addition, we expand to include more, but this heart is always there. And so this first kind of calm abiding practice that we'll just touch into is we're holding what? We're holding an object, okay? And so that's what they all do. They hold an object. And so the thing here is all these practices we always have three components. And I know there's a lot of kind of maps, but they become kind of natural in a way. We always come with a body. We always come with speech or energy, more subtle body, this flowing energy. And we always come with mind. So any meditation has to be like, what's my body doing? What's my speech or energy or wind? My respiration, what's that doing? And my mind, what's that doing? And so any technique is going to care for the body, the speech, and the mind. So here, for this kind of all these four practices, for our body, we'll just like have our posture, our spine follow its natural curve. If we like let our spine kind of naturally settle, like align itself, the rest of our body kind of naturally kind of aligns according to it. So that's like there's many points, but that's the really one crucially important point. Like in your body, let your spine kind of naturally align itself. So that's body. Speech, or the energy, the wind, the more subtle, that's breath. So in this case, we're not going to change our breath, our breathing at all. Let your breath freely be as it is. So that's the second, speech. And mind, the mind always has these two components. It's focusing on something, and it's doing that with a motivation. So in the beginning, we already tried to really generate a motivation. Refuge in bodhicitta, this gratitude and this great compassion. That's the motivation. Why am I doing this? Generate that motivation. And then what am I focusing on? That's where there's this variation of these four different ways to focus, the four different techniques of how we're directing our attention. And so we have a body, and each of these practices is just like naturally aligned with the spine. Our speech, we're just allowing our breathing to naturally settle. Our mind, generate this bright motivation, love, compassion, and wisdom for all beings. And then what am I focusing on? In this first foundational Tibetan Buddhist, foundational Buddhist practice, we're going to focus on our breathing as the object of our attention. So you can focus if you go to your nostrils, it's just literally feeling the sensation of the air moving in and out of the nostril. That's the object of your attention. As the air moves in, you know this is moving in. As it moves out, you know it's moving out. It's just this basic, simple awareness. Air's moving in, air's moving out. This is a foundational Buddhist calm abiding practice. We'll do that for a few minutes. Just follow your breathing, air moving in and out. And when your mind wanders, and like we forget to be paying attention to that, just like, wow, it wandered, kind of like in a way humorously, lightly, and bring it back to that. Oh, I'm following my breath. We're holding our attention to the movement of our breathing in and out of our nose. Now we'll just release our holding and have this insight. Our breath is moving. Our mind is moving. Movement, change, impermanence. Just the part of the nature of reality. Things just keep dynamically moving. And so we'll relax our focused attention on our breath in particular, and just kind of like let that knowledge, let that insight of the impermanent, flowing, interdependent nature of experience kind of be with that in your awareness. Relax. Thanks, friends. So now we'll allow that view, that way of being, of seeing, of holding, we'll allow it to naturally relax and integrate further. This bedrock Buddhism, foundational Buddhism, is going to naturally open itself into the Sutra Mahayana, or the great vehicle. We're going to expand our view, expand our love, expand our compassion, expand our wisdom, allow integration to happen more wholly, more fully, more completely. It's just a natural way of including and honoring more. So this is called a Mahayana, or great vehicle Buddhism. And so it has this same frame of noble beginning, noble middle, noble conclusion. And so in the noble middle here, it's still in these two same kind of subdivisions, calm abiding and insight. And here, the calm abiding practice, the technique, is once we've generated this motivation, love and compassion for all beings, with a wisdom of interdependence, dependent origination, everything is constantly moving. So here, the technique of shamatha, or calm abiding, is instead of focusing on the breathing, going in and out, we're having an even more subtle holding. We're training our mind to stay with an object that's even more quiet, more subtle. And in this case, the object is a visualized object. And this practice in general is called Tonglen, sending and receiving. And this is a heart practice of Mahayana, the path of the Bodhisattva, those courageous for the enlightenment of all beings. It's become very famous now. In Tibet, it was quite a very private practice because it's so vast. It's so great. The compassion is so great. The wisdom is so great. Here, as our object of attention, we're going to visualize someone in the sky or space in front of us that we easily love. Could be a person, parent, a brother, a sister, a child, a pet. Could even be a place. But like, it's a little easier at the beginning to start with someone you really easily love. Like, oh, this person's here. Wow, I'm so happy. I love you. So find someone. Like, it's so easy to care for this being as a natural response. And we visualize them and try to really get that visceral, oh, what do they look like? They're like right here. I feel like they're really here. And with this practice, so that's the object we're holding. This person or being that we really easily love. And what we're doing with this practice of sending and receiving is actually on our in-breath, we're allowing all the suffering, all the tension, all the challenge and difficulty that that person's experiencing. On our in-breath, we're allowing it to just effortlessly follow our breath and come inside of ourselves. We take away their suffering. And on the out-breath, we give them our own happiness. We send them our own joy and gratitude, appreciation, whatever that person or being needs to feel completely free of suffering and completely uplifted and just saturated with like just natural happiness, just buoyant, bright happiness. Our breath, the expansion of our view, we're so in touch with our bodhicitta that all of a sudden this ability just turns on. I will actually do whatever I can to relieve you of suffering, and I will give you my happiness. This bodhicitta is so bright. So the object of our compassion is a person we're visualizing. On the in-breath, we just naturally, effortlessly think anything that could possibly be challenging this person. Sickness, tension of mind, friction, trouble, fear, any kind of a negativity, disturbance. Just it easily, effortlessly comes into us. In the instant as it comes in on our in-breath, it comes into us. And in our heart center, our own bodhicitta, our own nature, it like almost takes that negativity as just total fuel. And it, instead of shutting us down, it totally brightens and empowers us to have even more love and more compassion, more creative wisdom. And it just easily, effortlessly pours out and naturally just goes to this being. And anything they could possibly need to feel happy and supported, uplifted, safe, creative, wonderful, settled, it instantly, that breath becomes exactly what the being needs to feel happy in a long-lasting way and to be enlightened, actually, to have their own nature fully turned on. So this is Tonglen, sending and receiving. We send our happiness, we take their suffering. So this is the reverse of a usual kind of so-called worldly or our usual way, where we take the good stuff for ourselves, we leave the leftovers for others. We're reversing this habit. Instead, we are second in line. The other is first. And so we start with a being that this is more easy to do with. So this is a very big view, very big motivation. I have the amazing kind of extraordinary wisdom and compassion and love that like someone else's negativity and suffering, that actually becomes the energy for my own goodness to shine more brightly. And it's flexible. Everything's interdependent. So that energy transforms into this bright, perfect fertilizer for my own love and compassion and wisdom to shine more brightly. So that's basically Tonglen. So we'll do this for a few minutes. And as, of course, with all these practices, as people feel comfortable, do you want to follow the breath instead? Or you want to do Tonglen? It's up to you. It's like, or you want to just quietly be here? That's however suits yourself. Do what's kind of comfortable and you feel is right for yourself. So for Tonglen, the object we're holding, this being we easily love on our in-breath, all the suffering comes inside of ourselves, becomes this perfect fuel and conditions for our own bodhicitta, our own heart mind to open even further, more brighter, more powerful, more kind of connected, goes out to the other being as perfect love and happiness. This is Tonglen. We'll do this for a few minutes. over time, we'll actually include a even bigger object of meditation. And that is, like, instead of only one being being the object of attention, we'll actually visualize two beings that we really care for. And we'll take both of their suffering onto ourselves and give both of them happiness. And then over time, as we get more settled in that, we'll include three. It begins like with friends, people we easily have a strong kind of sense of affinity, love, and compassion with. And then it extends even further into strangers, not just family and friends, the close ones, but actually extends to include beings we don't know at all. And then it extends even further into those we have kind of some tension with and animosity, what kind of would usually be called enemy. And at the end, this kind of, as we kind of include a bigger and bigger object of attention, we're actually including all sentient beings. That's this great Mahayana vehicle view. May all beings be free of suffering and have the causes of happiness. So this is the practice that really brings us into like a lived, visceral kind of living experience, an ability, like it actually, we're training our minds and our hearts with this practice of Tonglen to have this be a lived experience. So in the most important point isn't getting the specific details of the being we're visualizing, but to actively maintain this kind of calm, clear connection to this really genuine, heartfelt compassion for this being. And also the inner courage, the wisdom, the confidence that, like, I'll do whatever I can to have them be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. They can have my happiness even. I'll take their suffering. So if you want to extend this object of kind of the object of attention in this one bigger, you can even be kind of creative and like visualize the whole Milky Way and just know all these, there's so many beings in the Milky Way. On the in-breath, I take all their suffering. On the out-breath, I give them all of my happiness. So they're just instantly awakened. Their own goodness naturally, beautifully shines. We'll do that for 30 minutes, or sorry, 30 seconds if you want, to just have this bigger view. All beings, all the beings in the Milky Way, visualize the object of attention, some kind of giant celestial kind of feeling of like kind of the whole galaxy's there. We're taking it all on. If you want, comfortable, we'll do this for 30 seconds and just kind of have the big, bold, courageous kind of bodhisattva view. Now we naturally relax into the insight part of that meditation and just release any sense of holding. We're not trying to visualize anything. We're not trying to make anything happen. Just relax. And that being, it's like be with their goodness shining. All these beings, their goodness is just shining full on. Their wisdom and compassion is full on. Your own wisdom and compassion is full on. Your bodhicitta, their nature, it's just totally brightly happening. And just relax with it. That's the insight part of this practice. And this is Tonglen. This is really a deep heart practice of the way of the Bodhisattva. Those aspiring for balance, for all beings to be free of suffering and to have happiness. And then this is actually engaging that wish, called actualizing or engaging bodhicitta. We're just doing it in a very quiet, kind of subtle way, working more directly with our mind and our energy, our speech. This becomes a foundation for actually engaging then more outwardly in the world with more literal ways of communicating, of moving our bodies, moving our speech, like saying things. So this practice over time increases an amazing sense of courage, of fearlessness, actually. Like when challenging things come up, when people start to kind of like, come at us in a way that's like really adversarial or like just very unusual, then instead of pushing them away, we actually brighten our attention, brighten our love and compassion, and we actually like have this fearless view of kind of like really kind of tuning in to the dynamics of the situation, of this person. What's really going on with them? What's available to like really have their own goodness nature come out? And if they're not seeing that and they're not available for that, then at least preventing the harm. That kind of wisdom starts to turn on more brightly for more and more of our experience. So this is like a very practical kind of, and this is our own nature kind of becoming more fully available to itself, like having our own wisdom and compassion. They also call it power and abilities or skillfulness. Skillful means these are just turning on, meaning we're just settling into them more naturally, more fully. We're integrating further. So this is kind of core Sutra Mahayana practice, Tonglen. And then the third practice, the third way we'll go into the view, it opens into Tibetan Buddhism or Vajrayana, the indestructible vehicle. And so this is an additional radical opening, even greater, more inclusive vision, a way of being, a way of sustaining, a way of being, like conduct and behaving in the world. This is a very bold view. In addition to wanting to like have all beings be free of suffering and the cause of suffering, our intelligence is getting so sharp, like we're kind of leaning into like our wisdom and our goodness, our abilities so fully that now in this view, in the Tibetan Buddhist view or the Tantra Mahayana view, we see that every single thing we experience is actually perfect and pure. There's no such thing as suffering. They say this is a radical kind of revolutionary shift of how to engage ourselves and others and the worlds we're in. We're saying everything is just form, sound, and space, or body, speech, and mind, which we mentioned earlier. This view opens up to like, actually, everything is goodness nature. The utter fabric of each being is perfectly pure. They call it enlightened. The nature of every being is already 100% enlightened. It's naturally good. It's naturally wise and intelligent. So that's kind of the view here that we're like learning to like kind of hold lightly and like actually flexibly kind of like see, what is this true? This is a Vajrayana view or Tibetan Buddhist view, indestructible vehicle. We're seeing the indestructible or the unchanging nature of each being, of every form we experience, of every sound we hear, of every movement of mind. Its indestructible, unchanging nature is bodhicitta, is this awakened, beautiful, courageous awareness, this enlightened nature. So this is like key core Vajrayana view. And so in this system, in this view, and then the way this view is embodied in oneself, in one's body, in one's world, in the relationships of one world, there's these two techniques of the noble middle. And here it's always a calm abiding and an insight, the same as before. And here, like in Tibetan Buddhism, these are called creation. The calm abiding is called a creation stage practice. The insight is called completion stage practice. So sometimes it's more kind of secularly called a visualization practice. And then the dissolution practice, releasing the visualization practice. So what we're doing is we're directly allowing that enlightened nature of ourselves and others, of form, sound, and space, body, speech, and mind, to just already be as it is, perfectly enlightened. And in a creation stage practice, or this kind of like shamatha, the calm abiding component, we're holding something, right? It's a concentration practice. So here what we're doing is we're holding a visualization. In this specific practice, there's thousands of these practices, but we're just doing one. And the visualization we're holding in this one, because this is Tibetan Buddhist practice, as we're just in the sky in front of us, visualize the Buddha, an enlightened being. A being that, like, by all accounts, their enlightened nature is fully on. And so say there's a typical way that the Buddha looks, a historical Buddha. He's like, his body is so beautiful. He's like shining golden wisdom light. His right hand is, he's like seated, kind of legs crossed, his back kind of very noble, straight, dignified. His right hand is like pointing down on the earth, like earth touching gesture. His left hand is called equanimity mudra, resting in his lap. And just beautiful glowing light. Basically, you're like trying to hold this object of a completely enlightened being in the space in front of you. And everything they're doing, their body, speech, and mind, their breath, everything is just like enlightened display. It's like how the nature is when it just fully allows its enlightened nature to be. So this is just one visualization practice. Like as we go deeper into this, we visualize ourselves as an enlightened being. We visualize ourselves as like a fully enlightened being with surrounded by the whole community of enlightened beings. And we're doing all these enlightened activities. And there's so many different instructions on how to do this very specifically according to the very practices and lineages of these practices that have been held and shown to work over centuries to actually have the result of full enlightenment happen. And so for this calm abiding, this like concentration practice, we're gonna, on one side, we're creating this world, creation stage. We're creating a world where there's a Buddha in the space in front of us, and their own enlightened nature is just naturally shining. And we're just kind of letting that happen. Like, and these lights, they're golden lights, are just filling the space around us. They're totally filling ourselves. Our own enlightened nature is like totally turning on with no question, just like fearlessly, just like obviously, like of course it's enlightened. Of course I'm enlightened. Of course everything is goodness. And we're just kind of in this very simplified version of a creation stage visualization practice. There's that object of attention of the Buddha in the space in front of us, kind of feel the living presence, feel that courage, that goodness of ourselves come out, that fearlessness, that intelligence just brightly shine on, and kind of just allow that world, that enlightened universe, it's called mandala, the sacred world, to just fully presently be there and have this Buddha shining, like just like Tonglen, whatever is needed to help beings, instantly that light, that glow, that radiance, those abilities of the Buddha instantly bring the supportive conditions for all beings to see their own already enlightened nature. And so we'll hold that visualization with that kind of meaning in our minds. That's the concentration component of this Tibetan Buddhist creation stage or calm abiding practice. We'll do this for a few minutes. And now we release that holding. We dissolve the holding. Dissolution phase practice or insight practice in Tibetan Buddhism. We don't have to hold enlightened nature as if it's an object out there. In this view, the very nature of every form we experience is enlightened. Every sound we hear is enlightened. Every movement of awareness is enlightened. It can take the shape as a human, as a Buddha, as a child, as a tree, as the color blue, as any way that form, sound, and space can combine in interdependent worlds, objects, appearances, all of its enlightened display. It's enlightened energy, enlightened nature, just freely, interdependently displaying itself as outreaching love, compassion, and wisdom. This is the bold, courageous view of Tibetan Buddhism. It's all indestructible, enlightened nature. So here we dissolve holding on to any one particular part being enlightened as if everything isn't. We just boldly allow every single thing we experience, every movement of mind, any sound we might hear, any feeling we might have in our body, that's actually just enlightened nature presently arriving. So then we just relax into that. This is insight in Tibetan Buddhism. Thanks, friends. And then the fourth practice and the final one that we'll do just naturally expands that vision even further. This is the natural integrative impulse as it's kind of demonstrated through Tibetan Buddhism. The fourth view of calm abiding and insight is not even having an idea that there's form that's enlightened, sound that's enlightened, space that's enlightened, or body, speech, and mind being enlightened. It's just not holding at all. It's just literally relaxing, the same place we started. It's like being natural, letting your own naturalness be 100% as it is, settled and relaxed. And here the holding or the kind of in the calm abiding concentration part is just being with that recognition. And the insight is everything is naturally kind of unfolding as it is. It's already perfect. Nothing is left out. Nothing that needs to be added. Nothing needs to be subtracted. No effort needs to be made. But I do have to maintain awareness, be non-distracted. They call it undistracted non-meditation. What are we holding? We're not holding. We're just sustaining our naturalness. And the naturalness itself, our own love and compassion and wisdom, when it's actually fully being what it is, it doesn't have to hold itself that way. Everything it does is that way. So we kind of like no longer have the need to like actually hold the nature, to root or contain the nature. That anytime we hold, that's actually distorting the nature. And so in this kind of meditation, we're just trying to recognize our naturalness, be natural, uncontrived, totally effortlessly natural, and abide with that undistractedly. Maintain that calmly, abiding in our own naturalness. So that's this union of shamatha and vipassana, of concentration and insight, of calm abiding and extraordinary seeing. This is their natural union, to be natural as it is. And we'll do this union for a few minutes. Thanks, friends. So they call that last practice, it's like the innermost heart essence of Buddhism. It's the most simple, the most direct, the most natural. It includes everything. That last practice literally includes all the practices we did before. It includes the vision, the bold vision. This is all enlightened expression. And it does so with great compassion, a deep tenderness and fearlessness of heart for every being to see their own essential enlightened nature. I'll do whatever it takes to help uplift, to be a supportive kind of balm, to be whatever is actually helpful. And that this foundational, the bedrock, like, because things are impermanent, because they're always changing, and it's like, that's uncomfortable if we're not used to that, then we try to hold on in an unrealistic way. And when our holding, our unrealistic expectations of trying to kind of freeze frame reality, when it's actually moving and dynamic, we lock and hold certain habits. Then when the movement moves and we can't hold any longer, it creates this gap between reality and what we want. And that's called suffering in Buddhism, dukkha, dissatisfaction. And this fundamental uncertainty that happens when we try to box in a living dynamic experience, like reality, when we try to box it in any way, the gap between our box and actually how the kind of larger flow of reality, of what's happening inside of us, of what's happening outside of us, of the whole infinite halonic, Wilberian halonic stack of infinitely internested worlds within us and that we're a part of. This is called emptiness in Buddhism, or interdependence, dependent origination. So Tibetan Buddhist, like kind of this Vajrayana view, includes all these methods. And that's why mindfulness is always so important, because we have to keep cueing in to like, what is my heart doing right now? What is my mind doing right now? How am I being in this body, in this space, in this world? And when we can cue in like with present attention, then we know, what path do I need to re-recognize my naturalness? What technique right now is actually the proper right relationship or the proper fit to re-energize, to reaffirm my naturalness? So we use that mindfulness to say, oh, I need to really just calm down. What's available? I need to follow my breath. Oh, or I'll generate great compassion, Tonglen. Or I'll show up here as a living enlightened being. Like I have that courageous kind of view in my mind and heart. Or I'll let it naturally flow as it is, simply, elegantly, like just as nature happening. But if we don't check in with our mind and our heart, with mindfulness, with this present moment attention, then we kind of won't really know like the way to like actually, what do I do that's supportive for me to kind of connect to my own wisdom and compassion that's already there. And that's why Buddhism's not dogmatic, and like kind of constantly, like whatever the technique or whatever path helps a being re-recognize their own natural goodness, their own wisdom and compassion, that's celebrated. That's like a path of peace. It's a path of happiness. Any language it takes, any way any shape, any form, any time, that whatever brings greater happiness, less suffering, is like totally celebrated. And that we change and things change. So whatever keeps being a path that effectively, like completely brings that about, is like is a noble path. So really warmly embraced. And so that's kind of this noble middle. We just covered 4 different basic approaches to the noble middle of any practice in Tibetan Buddhism. And then the third and final is the noble conclusion. Always in Tibetan Buddhist practice, the way we seal a practice is say it's called with dedication and aspiration prayers. So basically we're reconnecting to the beginning, the noble beginning. We're reactivating that motivation, that view we had. The dedication is any good thing that just happened here, any positive, virtuous expression, any uplift, any loveliness that happened. I dedicate that specifically for every single being to be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. May every single being be free of samsara, cyclic suffering. May they recognize their own natural goodness and automatically be free of all this suffering. So that's a dedication prayer where we take whatever was so-called virtuous or meritorious, whatever of the shining display of our own nature, whatever we generated, however much we shined, we specifically orient that towards the result of the enlightenment, the awakening of every single being. That's called a dedication prayer. And the second component of this third noble one, the second is aspiration. That we aspire to do that even more beautifully, more inclusively, more boldly, more effectively, more creatively. We make these big aspiration prayers. And so we like kind of open the doors of our own and our own hearts and minds even more widely. So I'll pop in the chat here, a traditional Buddhist dedication prayer. It's just 4 lines here. And it's just, if you feel like connecting with it, go for it. So here's the typical dedication prayer. By this merit, may all obtain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. It's a typical dedication prayer, and just to really sincerely be with that. And then here's a typical aspiration prayer. The precious bodhicitta, and those without it, may it be generated, and those who have it, may it never diminish, but always continue increasing. The precious bodhicitta, this heart mind of enlightenment, and those without it, may it be generated. And those who don't know that's their nature, may they know that, their own wisdom and compassion. And those who do know that, may they know that infinitely, May that nature shine on in all circumstances at all times. So it's a big, big vision. And before I forget, what I'll do is I'll pop in a PDF of the basic outline that kind of discussed here. And so it kind of goes through these three noble frames. And just as this is a rough outline, I just did this morning, right before this. So like, it just shows some hints of these things we covered. So feel free to download that if you want. It's not, some final edited, make public kind of thing, but just enjoy. If that's helpful to have some of these basic frames as a reference, feel free. So thanks so much, friends. That's, we dedicate that merit. We aspire that like this precious bodhicitta, this nature we all have, may this be constantly, continuously available. In Tibetan Buddhism, the translation for meditation, gom, is just familiarization. We're just becoming familiar with our nature. So when it's like actually a challenging situation, we're familiar with our goodness, our wisdom and compassion and power, our skillful means, and the nature just keeps doing what it does because we're familiar with it. And so that's why practice makes perfect, or kind of following kind of these techniques, like however our mind is shutting down, however our heart's closing up, we get familiar with how it's not when it's shut down, how it's not when it's closed up, and we re-recognize that. And so then we release the specific closings of our mind and our heart when it kind of locks up in a distorted fashion and causes trouble for ourselves and others. So thanks so much. I hope that's helpful. Anybody want to kind of have some questions or any back and forth? Feel free. And I don't see any raise hand functions or anything. So if people want to, just feel free to unmute or as you wish. Great. So I don't hear anyone. So that's great. We have just a few more minutes here. It's so lovely to be with you all. I think clearly this is like a very big system of practices. And it's because we're so like amazingly complex. Each of us, we're so rich. The richness of reality just cannot be boxed in. So there's these, it's like they say the teachings are almost like a medicine. Whatever the specific kind of imbalance we have, we just need to actually ascertain the medicine that's the appropriate remedy to actually have resolve that specific tension, that specific kind of holding pattern that's not helpful. We don't need to take all the medicines at once. We need to basically have a sense of like, well, what medicines are available? And for myself, like what's helpful right now? And for those I'm around, according to my abilities, like what's helpful? How can I be with them in more helpful ways? And so it's always this living, moving kind of inquiry or exploration. And that's why I see it as very, just naturally, it's a healthy, integral, integrative process. This is like we're just constantly cueing in to like, what are some of the living threads of this situation I'm in, according to like where it came from, its history, where that it's kind of tending towards, its future. And then we kind of expand our ability to include more and more relationality, more and more interdependence. First, I start with myself, what's going on with me. Like I get to know that full spiral of my own self, these healthy versions of all these kind of spiral dynamic things, which Wilberian Integral is like outlined in spiral dynamics in such a kind of beautiful, like robust way. We care for like healthy beige, healthy purple, healthy blue, healthy red, healthy green, healthy teal, healthy turquoise, and we like kind of care for that in ourselves. And then we're extending that with our relationships, with how we are in the world. And then this bold kind of Vajrayana or Tibetan Buddhist view is we're using techniques that not only, do I look like this, the nature of reality is flexible. if it's helpful for me to flex in a certain way that shows up more skillfully, more helpfully for others, then like I'm training my mind, my heart to be willing to do that, to be clear enough and capable enough to kind of do that. And so we use these visualization practices also, one, to train ourselves to do that, and secondly, to connect with beings that have already accomplished that. Like in Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, there's like already enlightened beings. They've already they already have this full nature shining on. They're called Buddhas, enlightened beings. Yeah, go for it. Question, Beth, please. I can't hear you yet. Sorry.
There, how about that?
Perfect.
Yeah, so it seems like it would be especially helpful to have proximity to an enlightened being, a teacher. And in the absence of that, the particular imbalances that we have aren't as well addressed. And there's the temptation to sort of self authorize our practice. Any suggestions about how to increase that proximity to someone who can actually address those issues?
Wonderful. Yeah, thanks, Beth. It's a deeply insightful kind of contribution there. Yeah, just like if we're sick, like it's good to find a doctor. And if we're fortunate, it's good to know what is a good doctor. Like to really be able to distinguish, like what's a reliable doctor according to what I need help with. And the doctor doesn't just magically do kind of the treatment for us. Like they basically, offer a course of treatment. And then to some degree, it's up to us to participate with that and engage those kind of that treatment and to like experience the benefit, the result of like that healing or that fullness, that freedom, that enlightenment. And so it's kind of a similar thing. The Buddha often talked about that as like as an enlightened being or like a guide, a spiritual friend as being kind of like a doctor. The teachings they're offering are like the medicine. The community is like all the different supportive kind of staffs and circumstances to like help that course of treatment kind of go to completion. And then up to us to actually undergo that process to be fully healed, fully awakened. And so to find teachers, there's a lot of different instructions on what a qualified teacher would have according to Tibetan Buddhism. Like what would the qualities that they demonstrate be like? And those have been distilled in a lot of different ways as well. And one is they really have to demonstrate bodhicitta constantly. They're like the compassion they generate, the kindness they generate, the clarity of insight that they generate is just really regular. And it's impartial. They're not playing favorites. They're like, that's why they say in Tibetan Buddhism, you really should check a teacher you're going to really take on as being a guide, because they're like they're helping each of us explore parts of ourselves, of our hearts and our minds that like we've almost in a lot of cases, we've never even dared to conceive of it being possible for us to be that amazing. And so these are just like very unknown territories within ourselves and within others. So it's a big responsibility to ask for help for someone because they're saying, you know this territory much better than me. So like, what's the guidance you're offering? And so bodhicitta, heart, mind of enlightenment, that being should demonstrate that just brightly. And we should check on that. And they say traditionally in Tibetan Buddhism, you would check your teacher for like 7 years before you actually really followed the advice. But like nowadays, everyone's so busy. And also like, there's just some key things like that person should be really humble. They're almost always, they always keep themselves in a system of checks and balances. A good teacher in Tibetan Buddhism always is the student of a teacher. There's a lineage. So they're always held in check by someone holding them in check. It's never a rogue thing because they're always a part of an ecology of actual wisdom and compassion. So they receiving it, they're part of some kind of a living current of interdependence that didn't just start with them. Because interdependence doesn't just start out of the blue. It has to come from somewhere. And that's how interdependence works. There's always a previous cause, sets of causes. So they're always kind of held in some kind of a system. And that's just how healthy relationship seems to be. You know, we show up in a place And a big part of like actually showing up well is like us paying attention to the ecology, to the place. Like, well, how does it work here? What serves this place? What serves this community? What serves this home? And a big part is just paying attention like humbly, like with genuine interest, like this so-called turquoise view, where we really try to cue in with attention and attunement. Like, what is the place that is happening here? And a good teacher really does that. They're very careful, very full of care to always check in with what is helpful now. And so another way to check with bodhicitta is if someone's actually coming from bodhicitta, their way of being in the world, of expressing, of connecting with others, of sharing, of being silently present, it brings an uplift to those around. It actually activates the inner intelligence of those around them, the compassion of those around them, and the wisdom of those around them. It never says, turn off your wisdom. It never says, tighten up and get selfish. Being in the field or the presence of someone like that, it would just naturally encourage an even wider, greater, deeper field of love, compassion, and wisdom to settle and expand. It would just naturally integrate.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just,
Please.
I was thinking about maybe this is just sort of the relative absence of my own merit, but that the sort of inaccessibility
Yeah.
to a lot of these guys is so
Mhm.
prevalent today. To have actually a personal relationship
Yeah.
seems to be quite a bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
And then even further, to find an integral model in a sangha
Hmm.
is even more of a challenge. And so
Hmm.
because of the sort of downsides typically of the traditional mode of sangha, that there's more of a distorted mirror that you're getting,
Mm.
that combined with the absence of that personal relationship with a teacher.
Hmm.
Um, because as I said, my own sort of uh, lack of merit, if you will, of having that accessibility, that personal relationship, or
Hmm.
just the absence of these people who are
Hmm.
around but not having that closeness. So
Yeah, it's like so many beautiful insights you're sharing there, but I mean genuinely. It's part of the information age is there's a lot of different ways to connect, and they're not all like a lot of them are virtual, they're not in person with that kind of
yeah.
cozy intimacy. So there's a lot of different ways to actually put feelers out and see what kind of person might be kind of like a warm-hearted or a more activated connection for you. So there's a lot more of that. It's also a problem because there's so much, it's hard to kind of sift through to find the signal for yourself, like amongst all the things that aren't as relevant to oneself. Um, but so there's always that to kind of keep checking in the field. Secondly, with Buddhism, aspiration prayer is such a big thing. Aspiring, how we frame, to aspire to have that connection come about, to ripen, to orient our being, to have that approach that we're actively kind of like really longing for that with a lot of clarity and with, with all these kind of good qualities we're talking about. That actually really is a way to generate merit to aspire. So there's so many aspiration prayers we can do along these lines to keep any good things we do, virtue, merit, that we can actually intentionally dedicate that for the enlightenment of all beings. That's big way to generate virtue. Basically, I mean, Buddhism is big, and I know we're right at time here. So Buddhism is big. Like you can even, if you rejoicing, some beings achieved enlightenment just by rejoicing in all the good things other beings are doing. That's a whole complete practice unto itself. So like there's a lot of different ways, especially in Vajrayana Buddhism, the path of skillful means. There's a lot of ways to skillfully make connections that are based on bodhicitta with other beings. And so one is rejoicing, one is dedicating the merit, one is keep activating our motivation, one is to have this longing kind of connection to a living teacher that we can have more close proximity to. And to some time it comes down to it, there is that risk of actually jumping in the pool and actually doing, if it's a plane ticket or it's like having a virtual, like showing up for someone's live stream thing for a few times and getting the next step into like seeing if that relationship with a specific person or a specific community works for you to kind of do that some too. But I really appreciate it. That's not in any way a final definitive response, Beth. I mean, you're opening like such a rich, like very important topic to explore further. I really appreciate that. I also just want to respect people's time, but I really appreciate that. Um, Possibly in future integral life sessions, there's kind of opportunity to explore that more. But yeah, I feel you. I'll keep thinking into that inquiry and like being with it. It's so relevant. It's really important. So thank you for that, Beth. And thanks so much, Phyllis, for really hosting this, like helping hold the space. And of course, Namali as always, but Phyllis, Namali, y'all are such pillars of integral life, integral good things. Like you all bring so much joy and richness, right? I mean, there's so many familiar faces here on this call. Like, I mean, like deep, I'm dedicate the merit to Namali and Phyllis, very highlighting amongst the infinite stadium of beings. Like we can highlight people in the front row, like there's nothing wrong with that. So thank you, Phyllis. Thank you, Namali. May all of your aspirations and kind of wishes instantly come true according to the Dharma, like full on bodhicitta for all beings. May like happiness like find you everywhere you go. Thank you all very much for sharing the space. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.